President Muhammadu Buhari is reiterating the Nigerian government's determination to achieve 30 gigawatts of energy by 2030. He made the remark during the discussion panel on a just energy transition at the ongoing U.S.-Africa Leaders Summit in Washington, D.C. He also outlined the comprehensive energy transition plan unveiled by the administration in response to issues associated with climate change. State House correspondent Adesowa Mora reports from D.C.
President Buhari arrives the venue of the summit. It's his first engagement at the three-day high-level meeting between President Biden and African leaders. U.S. Secretary of State sets things in motion with his opening remarks.
We know that African nations have contributed relatively little to this crisis, but are disproportionately harmed by it. It's both unfair and unrealistic to ask them to turn their backs on economic development and opportunity in the name of a clean energy transition. To ask them, in effect, to forego what many of us have done in the past in developing our countries and our economies. And so we believe that the best way, indeed the just way, to address the climate crisis in Africa is to work together.
Many climate and environmental activists have criticized industrialized countries such as the U.S. for not accepting responsibility and liability for the climate crisis, not only as a moral obligation, but also to help finance climate adaptation actions on the continent. However, Mr. Blinken says the U.S. remains a partner in solving the crisis while announcing a $290 million investment in the Power Africa program.
The United States will work closely with African countries as they determine how best to meet their specific energy needs, understanding that for many, the clean energy transition will be a transition to consistent, reliable energy in the first place. We'll do so through programs like Power Africa, which has mobilized the public and private sectors to deliver cleaner, more reliable electricity to over 165 million people in sub-Saharan Africa who previously didn't have access. We're proud to announce a new investment of $290 million in that program. Combating the climate crisis, like so many other challenges we face, was actually championed by Africans in the first place. Indeed, in Africa, we see not only the stakes of this crisis, but also the solutions. Gabon has led the way in conserving its forest resources, which now absorb 140 million tons of CO2 every year, benefiting tens of thousands of people vulnerable to both floods and to droughts. Nigeria has set bold targets and robust regulations for methane reductions, the first country in Africa to do so, which could reduce air pollutants by a third and avert tens of thousands of deaths.
After that, the discussion on climate adaptation and the just energy transition went into closed session. With the cameras out and press asked to leave, President Buhari's spokesperson says the president made demands from the U.S. during his submission. He asked for Nigeria to be included in the G7's climate partnership list for co-creation of a just energy transition program. He also asked for considerable financial and technical support to achieve Nigeria's ambitious vision of 30 gigawatts of energy by the year 2030 with renewable energy mix. He says the success of clean energy in Nigeria and elsewhere in Africa will need concessional, low-interest capital-led investments. Meanwhile, earlier in the day, the president received members of the Abu Dhabi Foundation. They announced the conferment of the foundation's award on President Buhari for his efforts on peace and security.
It is to reinforce the work that the president is doing, promoting a bright future for young people who must be given a future that is free of intolerance, one rich in accommodation, full of brotherliness, and also for the entire West African sub-region, that yes, sacrifices are being made by Nigeria at home and in the neighborhood, and there is a recognition of the fact that the world is watching, they're seeing what he's doing, and they're coming to say, thank you to Nigeria.
Adesowa Mora, Arise News.
All right, joining us on the morning show today from Washington, D.C. to give us more on the ongoing U.S.-Africa Leadership Summit is State House correspondent Adesowa Mora. Great to see you again at this one. Give us a sense of what's been happening, as regards this summit on the sidelines, conversations about energy, conversations about climate change and all of that.
Good to see you, Rufai. A lot is happening at the same time at the summit. It has also come with its own controversies. Skeptics have said that, although the U.S. tries to avoid mentioning China and Russia and others, this summit seems to be more about what China and Russia are doing on the continent, forcing the U.S. to have a summit like this coming almost a decade after the first one. But there have been a lot of engagement. But yesterday, the summit officially kicked off with the Diaspora Young Leaders, African Leaders Forum. And the highest U.S. official who spoke at any of those sessions yesterday was Vice President Kamala Harris. She's made a couple of announcements, programs the U.S. government intends to do to help the young, burgeoning population of Africa to meet the challenges of their generation. We also heard from a couple of presidents at different sessions yesterday, including President George Weah of Liberia, President Julius Bio of Sierra Leone. They made the case that there should be the enabling environment for African youths to truly become the leaders of the future they are always said to be. And of course, we heard from President Muhammadu Buhari. Well, we heard he spoke yesterday at an engagement. It was initially meant to be an open session, the climate adaptation and just energy transition. But soon after, the Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, and President Tshisekedi spoke, that session decided to become a closed door. No reason was given. Presidential spokesperson Garba Shehu issued a statement. He told us that the president emphasized on the just energy transition component of that session, which was the seventh session for the day yesterday. President Muhammadu Buhari talked about the national policy of renewable energy. Now, that policy, we do know, was adopted this year by the Federal Executive Council, and it's very ambitious. It's supposed to harness Nigeria's renewable energies in driving sustainable development across the country. 30-30-30, to have 30 gigawatts of electricity, renewable energy mix, really, by the year 2030. Rufai, you and I know that it's difficult to keep the lights on at the moment in Nigeria. Several administrations have tried. No matter how much they try, it's very difficult to have distribution, transmission of electricity to Nigerian homes and businesses, and for them to stay that way. And of course, a lot of side events also happened yesterday. There's a lot happening at the same time. I could take the whole morning to tell you what happened at the summit yesterday.
All right, brilliant. Thank you very much, Adesua. One of the things we spoke about yesterday was Nigeria going with a plan, with a strategy, with a mission to this Leaders Summit. And I'm glad you've used the word ambitious when it comes to the 30-30-30 policy. So by the year 2030, generating 30 gigawatts of electricity, even though currently we're doing about 4,000 megawatts, and when we have the potential for 12,000 megawatts of electricity. I'd like you to talk to or speak to investments, because I know that in the president's speech, he was speaking about the importance of investing into the power sector in Africa, especially in Nigeria, to achieve these goals, and also the Power Africa program by the United States. Were there any conversations around this, or are there any prospects? Are people willing to invest in achieving the 30-30-30 policy?
Yes, Ayo, so great. The president did speak about the financial burden of energy transition. You and I know that there's a race to net carbon economy, there's a race to net carbon world, albeit different pace for different countries at the moment. And just like Secretary of State Antony Blinken said at during his opening remarks, he says, is it really just for Africa to abandon the sort of energy they're able to generate at the moment for clean energy when they're just developing? There's been that conversation about balancing development and the race to renewable energy, especially for the African continent. What President Muhammadu Buhari was really saying yesterday is that Africa, even though it's the least contributor to this footprint, is bearing the most consequences. And we've heard over and over again how climate activists have said industrialized countries such as the US have to pay appropriately for these footprints, and for so that developing countries such as Nigeria can then afford climate change adaptation actions in their country for these renewable energies. And that's what President Muhammadu Buhari was pushing for yesterday, to say the US has to come in with technical support, with financial support. Africa is not just great for its population, it's also great for its mineral resources. And I'm not talking about oil and gas. I'm talking about resources that will help build technologies for these renewable energies, such as batteries, such as wind turbines. Africa does have those resources, but how do they harness them? How do they make them, become practical? It's huge. It's a huge cost. And we do know that developing economies are struggling. What's happening on the continent is a lot of needs are struggling for the limited resources, let alone the financial burden of climate change adaptation action. And so, yes, those conversations were heard. Today is dedicated to business all through. We're expected to see a lot of MOUs signed by African CEOs and their US counterparts. There will also be an MOU on even the AFCFTA. So, yes, analysts are asking for the US to put its money where its mouth is. So it's talking great about partnering Africa in a lot of issues, shared priorities, such as climate change, peace, security, development, and all of that, infrastructure, trade, investment. But you have to show us the money. And this is what the summit is expected to achieve, Ayo. But it is too early. I cannot say if we are hearing anything concrete. I cannot say yet if there have been enough specifics for skeptics who say this is another photo opportunity.
Dokwen Adesua Omorwan reporting live from America. It's good to see you. Two quick things. Two quick things. One, talk to us about the Artemis Accords, because we were told that Nigeria and Rwanda were the two first African countries out of the 23 countries that have signed to sign up to that Artemis Accords about peaceful exploration of space. And then secondly, you mentioned business meetings. Yes, there's supposed to be the Nigeria-US Investment Forum. Looking around, who are the business people from Nigeria that you have seen on the ground, either there on their own or as part of the president's delegation?
Well, Dr. Betty, great to see you as well. The Artemis Accord that was signed is the first one that is laudable for Nigeria and Rwanda, who have become the first African countries to join US, European allies, Japan, and the rest on that accord. It comes at a time when China is also intensifying its own, race. Everybody's going to the moon, and that's the next exploration for the world. But I do not have much on that accord yet, Dr. Bachi. I do not have the details of it. But yes, we should hear more in the coming hours and coming days as analysts begin to look at its importance and its relevance to Nigeria at this time. And but again, Nigeria signing that accord is a plus. And for the business individuals or business people here, we've seen the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele. He was on ground the day President Muhammadu Buhari arrived here. A couple of ministers, Minister for Communication and Technology, the Minister for Trade and Investment is also on ground. The Minister of Transportation has been cited. The private sector, we do know that CEO, the UBA Group, Tony Elumelu, also is on ground. He had a side event some days ago. There are a number of Nigerian CEOs that are on ground here, a lot of business entrepreneurial minds and individuals that are at this summit, Dr. Batty. Again, today is all about business. It's going to look at a lot of critical sectors, such as the trade investment posture of the U.S., agribusiness, the digital sector, the tech sector. Dr. Batty, you know very well about the AGOA flagship program of the United States and how trade has declined on the African continent, even under that flagship program, especially for sub-Saharan Africa that trades with that flagship program. It enables duty-free products into the United States. Even for the northern African countries that have their own window of trading, truly generalized trade systems, we've also seen a decline in trade through that window as well. And all of this, the US says, is trying to correct. $55 billion was announced yesterday for the next 3 years on the African continent. Again, we haven't heard the meat to the bone of such announcement. That and many more. A lot of people will be looking at to hear the substance of all of this, Dr. Batty. What does it mean for the African continent? What does it mean for the largest country on the continent, Nigeria?
All right, thank you so much for your time on this one. Hopefully, Nigeria will be up there as regards aerospace, when the Artemis Accord kicks in fully. Thanks for your time. We'll move on to the next story this morning. The chairman and editor-in-chief of this Arise Media Group, Prince Unuka Bagbana, yesterday responded to allegations leveled against him by the APC, or Progressive Congress Presidential Campaign Council, PCC. Director of Media and Publicity, Mr. Ononuga, and his Director of Strategic Communications, Mr. Alake, also challenged them to present their candidate, Bola Tinubu, for debate and town hall meetings in order for the electorate to interrogate the proposed policies and program and made informed choice who should lead them in 2023. Obagbana, in a 4-page rebuttal by an article by Ononuga and Alake, which was in response to an earlier statement by This Day Arise Group, titled Tinubu and This Day Arise Media Group, an attack on free speech, stressed that journalists were not the opponents of the APC presidential candidate in the forthcoming election. The statement titled Lies Have Short Legs, They Do Not Run Far. The fake news from Bayon, Onuga, and Dele Alake, categorized in 4 parts and was signed by Obagbana's Chief of Staff, Fauziya Mohammed, while noting that although the APC PCC members had personally called to dissociate themselves from the resort to blackmail, personal attack, and bullying by Alake and Onuga, the statement noted that everyday media calls on public officials and those who seek to account, establishing that there is nothing personal with the APC candidate. There's a lot to discuss on this matter. This matter just keeps going on and on. Ayo, you want to have a stab on it first, and Dr. Batty will take it up and probably comes back to me. Ayo.
All right, thank you very much, Rufai. Let me borrow the heading of the statement that Prince Obagbana made, which is Lies Have Short Legs, They Do Not Run Far. Very detailed, and thanks for just highlighting the 4 categories. Dele Alake and Mr. Dele Alake and Mr. Bayon Onuga had released a statement in response to the This Day Arise Media statement on press freedom. And what Prince Obagbana did in that statement was to address specific issues that were highlighted, especially allegations made on his person and his business. So he spoke about the MKO June 12 elections, very detailed, I must say, a very detailed 4-pager, and talked about what really transpired between him and Chief MKO Abiola, talking about the fact that he was running with the National Republican Convention whilst MKO Abiola was running with the Social Democratic Party, SDP, in 1993. And of course, naturally, they were on opposing sides of a political divide. However, having to come together when Abacha came, the military wanted to disrupt what was a democratically elected process. Now, beyond that, he also spoke to the allegations around his involvement with the EFCC or not, and the Nigerian Newspaper Proprietors Association of Nigeria, NPAN, and what transpired, especially with Dasuki Gate, the refunds of money, and just really spelled out in detail what happened. He also spoke to his exclusion from being a director in the UK and talked about the fact that the matter was before a UK Court of Appeals, the UK Court of Appeals, and finally ended with staff salaries and other matters. Again, like I mentioned, detailed. Now, what I want to point out here is the difference between the statement released by Mr. Dele Alake and Mr. Bayo Ononuga, and this statement released by Prince Obaigbena. One statement didn't address the issue. What they did as a rebuttal or as a response to what the These Day Arise media had released was just an attack on personalities without responding to the issues. What Prince Obaigbena has done in his statement is that he took each of the matters, allegations, one after the other, and gave detailed responses, date, fact, as a proper journalist should do. What we are asking, and still going back and putting forward to the APC spokesman, is this. Stop the distractions. Stop seeing or putting forward the media or journalists as your enemies. We are doing what we are supposed to be doing as a fourth estate of the realm. What should be done is to support the media to ensure that we have a sound democracy in Nigeria. And still, we're still calling for you to respond. Very simple. If there are allegations made that you feel were lies, as you have said in your heading, provide a superior argument, provide facts, present your document, provide dates, respond. Don't just talk about, oh, you're evil, you're this. That's not the matter. It's a distraction from the real issues, and it is taking Nigerians for granted. Enough is enough. So what I'll be posing a challenge to them is, end this, respond. As with the call from Prince Obaigbena's statement, put yourself to, submit your principle to a public conversation, a town hall series. Even if you do not want to come to the This Day town hall meeting, present yourself for media scrutiny. Respond to some of the allegations, strong allegations around, being a drug baron and so on, and respond. Chief Bode George posed the challenge yesterday. Just tell us your school, your classmates, your teachers, simple things that Nigerians are asking. If you're unable to do this before election, if your principal becomes president, is this what we're going to be facing? Whereby we ask questions and you determine whether or not you want to respond, or whether you deem it fit to respond to Nigerians calling you. And finally, just to end on a statement or a statement in that release, journalists are not your opponents in the 2023 elections. They are not. And I believe that it's due time that their principal calls them into order and actually they begin to face the issues. Nigerians deserve better.
Dr. Bati?
Okay. The first thing to note here is that the right of reply is a sacred principle in journalism and media practice. So I'm sure that both Mr. Dele Alake and Mr. Bayo Ononuga, who accused This Day Arise News of grandstanding on public morality, and who made a number of ad hominem allegations, did not expect that they would get away with their presumption or the arrogance of some of their claims. Therefore, it is in order that Mr. Obaigbena, the chairman of This Day Arise group, has responded. So now we have two sides of the matter. Why we cannot sit in judgment, as I said the last time we discussed this, let no man be a judge in his own cause. And I'm saying that advisedly, because in the statement about public morality, the sanctimonious statement on public morality that was issued by Mr. Alake and Mr. Ononuga, my name was mentioned there. 2 paragraphs were devoted to me. At the appropriate time, I will respond to them. But the matter is as follows. So this is about the right of reply. The second issue here is that, look, you can't just attack people and think that they will keep quiet. And what are the key issues in this particular rebuttal by Prince Nduka Obaigbena? He has had one to defend his reputation, that he's a man of integrity, and all those ad hominem claims by Alake and Ononuga are patently wrong. One principal point there is their own hypocrisy. Because in one of the paragraphs, the point was made about salaries, or how Prince Obaigbena does not pay salaries. But the same Mr. Ononuga, who signed the statement, has been reminded that as the MD, editor-in-chief of the news, he was not paying salaries. But here in Arise News, nobody is complaining about the payment of salaries. Even if all of us will agree that, look, the economy is bad, the media environment is poor, but I have not heard anybody complaining about payment of salaries. Second, they made a point about Arise News UK. That was also effectively debunked to the effect that, look, Arise News is broadcasting from across continents, across Africa, across Europe, across the Middle East. So the point was also made about EFCC and what the matter was with media owners. It wasn't just this day. The statement clearly states that, look, at the time, every media house was asked to come and give accounts because of the support that had been provided by the Jonathan government. And that beyond all of that, whatever money that this day may have returned was because there was an attack, a Boko Haram attack on the offices of this day newspaper in Abuja. And so this new government came in and thought, where the media does not deserve any kind of support, and they asked for the money back, and it was returned. The statement also made it clear that Mr. Bagbina, was not at any time detained by the EFCC. So some of those, loud, hypocritical claims are made. I think, it's in order that, Mr. Bagbina has responded. He also made it clear that he had, contrary to the claims by Alake and Ononuga, good relationship with the late Bashorun MKO Abiola, despite the fact that he ran at some point on the platform of the NRC, the National Republican Convention in 1993. But Abiola was in the Social Democratic Party. So the full statement is available on the pages of this day newspaper today. I think pages 16 to 19. It's also available online, and people, can then look at both sides of the story. But there was one point made in that statement by the office of Obagbena, which is that, look, journalists are not the opponents in this matter. Journalists have a constitutional responsibility, and I think it's so painful that one has to be explaining the responsibility of journalists to a Mr. Lake or a Mr. Ononuga, who had spent their own entire lives, also in this space. They need to be reminded of what the job of journalists should be. I think that's very sad. In their old age, they shouldn't expose themselves to this kind of ridicule. But the point, of course, is clear, that journalists are not the opponents in this matter. What journalists have been asking for is that, look, candidates should engage with the public. When questions are raised, candidates should be ready to offer explanations. The only thing that Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu has been asked to do by the media, by the independent media, is basic questions. Basic questions. Explain these basic questions. What is your background? What is your actual identity? Where did you go to school? Were you associated with, drug trafficking, narcotics trafficking? These are just basic questions that anybody can just respond to. And yet, he will say that he will not make himself available for interrogation at a public forum. He will insist that he will organize his own conversation. Okay, maybe that's a political strategy. But when Nigerians ask these questions, respond. Instead of this argumentum ad hominem that his spokespersons are engaging in. However, that statement also pointed out that this is not the entire team of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu fighting the media. It's just two persons, Mr. Alake and Mr. Bayo Ononuga. And that there are members of the Presidential Campaign Council of Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu who are not part of this. That statement also made that very clear. So in other words, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu is running a divided communications team and a tainted communication strategy. And that is why I think the candidate himself, who has been silent on this matter, will have to come forward and make it very clear where he stands in the matter. Is it the case that two members of his team are fighting a fight, a battle that is at best a distraction? Which takes me to the point about the role of communications, strategies in this whole, matter. And I speak as somebody who has experience in that regard, and nobody can question that. The record is there. And it is as follows. That, look, when you recruit a media team, communication strategists, they are supposed to help you to make friends. The simple thing that Mr. Laki and Mr. Ononuga have done, in my view, is to make enemies for their candidate and to divert the message. Bola Tinubu wants to be president of Nigeria. Can they stay on the message instead of fighting people and looking for enemies and compromising the campaign process and sabotaging the campaign? The third point is as follows. The government of Nigeria, either it is INEC or the National Security Advisor, had always said, look, people should just obey the law. There is an Electoral Act 2022 that talks about violations, abusive language, heating up the polity, causing unnecessary problems. Sections 91, 92, 93 of that Electoral Act will seem to refer. I think it's beginning to get to a point now where the National Security Advisor may have the need to summon a meeting of communication strategies in all these political parties and surrogates, those that are referred to as surrogates, who are causing problems by just heating up the polity, causing a distraction. Can we all just focus on the issues, on the themes? Mr. Laki and Mr. Ononuga are better off putting their energy to, this is what Tinubu wants to do, this is what he wants to achieve. I mean, we want to hear that. But going about abusing people and, just diverting attention from the substance, I think is counterproductive. And Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu himself should take ownership of his own campaign and know what advice is useful to him as this process continues. Because there will be a day when all the persons who are abusing people all over the place will get their full comeuppance. Now, as for the attacks on Ruben Abati in 2 paragraphs, well, Yoruba culture does not allow younger people to insult older people. But there is this popular saying, as you will attest to, where you want to get angry with an older person. You say, excuse me, sir, Agbayani, sir. This is the kind of contest that is here. Because, what is all that point? I've never been convicted anywhere. I've never committed any crime anywhere. I've never stolen anybody's money. The Nigerian state has a responsibility to investigate anybody. And when they investigate, it's up to them. And the people who are saying Ruben Abati was detained, some of them, at least one of them ran away at a point from the law. Another person had also been detained, but we don't need to go into all of that. And then, attacking Buruji Kashamu, who died in 2020, God bless his memory. There's no record anywhere that Buruji Kashamu was ever convicted. And if they have the record, well, I'm sure that, the executors of the Kashamu estate, are in a position, to take them on. And that's a very cheap shot. When a man is dead, you don't kick him. That's the whole point in Sophocles' Ajax and even in African tradition. So what kind of cheap shot is that? And how is it an offense, really, for a journalist to go into politics? Okay? And they say, oh, he's a card-carrying member of a People's Democratic Party. Well, both of them will have to produce that card as evidence because you can't just make claims against people. But I'm constrained to attack, older persons who are fathers, grandfathers, who have to conduct themselves, with considerable respect. But they've been challenged by Prince Obaigbena, and they've been asked to provide proof of some of their claims. But I think it's getting to a point, I will close on that note, that the National Security Advisor has to step in and call people who are just heating up the polity unnecessarily, either in the media space or on social media, to tell them, look, can we focus on the issues, as the law says? And Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu should realize that in this matter, the buck stops at his desk. He should call his team to order.
It has to be said. I think we have 4 minutes, but if I had 10, I would have expatiated expansively, but it has to be said. And I think I sound like a broken record player when we repeat this. We've got nothing against Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu. All we want is he should come and talk to the Nigerian people. In fact, I read through his manifesto and I aligned over 40 different questions I would like to ask him. Let's talk the issues. Why are his surrogates letting him not attend the media engagements? What does he have to fear? We would like to ask questions about how he made his money. He said he made his money through inherited real estate. Who gave him the real estate? Because I remember one of his surrogates also talked about, him being homeschooled because of the challenges growing up. We just want to ask questions about character. We just want to ask questions in his manifesto about the agricultural board he wants to bring back. We just want to ask questions about what schools did he go to. We just want to ask questions about allegations that have been circulating for a while, about narcotics and drugs and all of that. And he has the right to come clear all of that. Why are we asking those questions? Because our job in the media is to be able to amplify the voices in society and get clarity in our outcomes through questions. And please, Mr. Prince Ndukau Baigbana has reacted to all of the concerns. But I think what Mr. Dele Alake left in his reply, rather than attacking Dr. Abati and Prince Ndukau Baigbana, is that he should answer the question that did he really call the management of this day to sack me, Rufai Oseni, and Mr. Shaka Momodu, editor of This Day? Can he reply to that? Because those were the real substance in the matter. Did he call? And why did he make that call? Also, he should reply as regards the case raised and the reports are raised as regards the man that died, that This Day enunciated. And please, we give every candidate a fair chance here. I would not like to join words with Mr. Dele Alake and our Bayo Onuga because I have absolute respect for them. Despite the fact that they disrespect me in public, I'll always go high when they go low. Yesterday, Mr. Dele Alake went on a platform and took a couple of minutes to still attack and abuse Dr. Abati and I, discrediting us, saying we are not journalists because we make empirical analysis on air. Mr. Dele Alake, you're supposed to be a mentor to all of us all. We look up to people like you and Mr. Bayo Onuga. And young journalists are watching. We've got no problems. Come on the Arise Morning Show. Let's debate your manifesto. Let your candidate come on this platform. Let's just debate so that Nigerian people can have a good show. But we will not come down to your level of vitriolics and abuses. I've got nothing but love and admiration for Mr. Dele Alake and Mr. Bayo Onuga. Nigerians are watching, and most importantly, children are watching.